So we are going to move really quickly through this. So I apologize in advance if we go kind of too fast. We're going to look kind of briefly at how to do discussions in Canvas, but we're going to spend most of the time on strategies or ideas to kind of get you started. So really quickly, we'll go through some housekeeping things. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to cover, like I said, a lot. So we're going to move pretty quickly. But hopefully you'll walk away with at least a couple ideas that you can use. And then, of course, at the end, I will explain your artifact so that if you want to earn DLC CEUs, you will know what to submit as your artifact in order to earn those. All of our virtual PD sessions on Canvas are going to be worth 0.15. So that is an hour and a half worth of work. So the assumption is you're with us for an hour, and then you will spend an average of 30 minutes creating your artifact. So we want to include that time that you spend on that as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine Leatherman. So I am one of the instructional technology facilitators for secondary schools. If you have any questions about this session, feel free to email me. My email is on your screen right there. And I am using our ITF account so that I have some more controls and options through this session. So if you need more support on Canvas, you can find it on our Canvas page on the Gaston Digital website. The bit.ly is here on your screen. And you will find all of our virtual PD, our menu. We're offering a total of 12 different topics this spring, so be sure to check those out. Video tutorials, self-paced course, lots of support on that page, so be sure you check that out. And then here are the standards that this session is going to hit, so both standards for students and standards for you as teachers. So you can find those on the slides. Again, I'll share the presentation with you at the end. So what you're going to want is to have this Google Meet screen up so you can watch and follow along. And then you may want to have Canvas open as well if you want to kind of follow along when we do the creating a discussion in Canvas portion. Totally up to you though. You can just kind of watch me and then go back and try it on your own later. So first of all, let's talk about why should you use discussions? Because I think in conversations with some of you and other teachers in Gaston County, discussions is kind of one of those hidden gems that a lot of people haven't necessarily taken the time to use because it seems very, very basic, and it is. But if you get creative with it, it can really add a lot of engagement and bring in some communication and critical thinking skills for your students and kind of get them on the path to being more active learners and not just passively watching a video or reading an article on those remote days or virtual days. So a couple of reasons that you should consider using discussions in Canvas. Now, obviously, this is a discussion that's going to be more text-based. There are some options, but for the most part, it is going to be kind of written response, but it's still bringing in that back and forth. And part of it comes from this cone of learning that you see on your screen. So I just want you to kind of think to yourselves, what type of activities are you having your students do in class? If they're sitting in front of you on those days, and what types of activities are you having them do on remote days? And if you look at the cone of learning here, then you can see that 70% of what we say is, we tend to remember 70% of what we say after 2 weeks. And part of that includes participating in a discussion. So kind of my goal for today is to show you how easy it is to create a discussion in Canvas to kind of bring the rigor a little bit up in your courses and help your students really remember what it is that they're learning. Because I think at the end of the day, we all want them to obviously learn what it is we're teaching. So that's kind of where this session comes from. I also want you to think, these are the levels of engagement, and this is based on, so this is a sketch note, and this is based on Philip Schlechty's research. And so you can see that basically he looks at the level of attention and the level of student commitment and how that leads to student engagement. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a waterfall response here. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to look at this sketch note, take a minute and kind of look at it and see how the different levels of attention and commitment from students lead to various levels of engagement. And I want you to think about your response. Why do we want our students kind of in this engagement portion of the graphic here? So why do we want them engaged in our classroom? I want you to type your response in the chat, but do not hit send yet. So the point of this is we are all typing our responses. And then in just a minute, I am going to have you all click enter at the same time. And we're just going to kind of flood the chat with all of our ideas. So again, think about why you want students in this engagement level. What is kind of the purpose of that? If you need to find the chat, then you want to go to the Google Meet window or tab, and up at the top right corner of your screen, you should see a couple icons to the left of the time. One of those is a little speech bubble, and if you click that, that is going to open the chat. So again, type in your answer to the question, why engagement? Don't hit enter yet. And I'll give you about 15 more seconds, and then I will have everybody click enter. All right, I am going to assume everybody has typed their answer. So if you would, go ahead and let's click enter and send those responses. Awesome. So if you at any point want to respond to other people in the chat, you can put the @ symbol, and that just kind of clarifies who you're responding to. It doesn't necessarily tag it in the chat for Google Meet, but a lot of times if a bunch of people are typing in the chat, then putting that @ symbol in front of somebody's name can help everybody kind of follow the different conversations that are going on. So we want them to be actually involved and motivated. We want them to have higher attention and really get that into, like David said, your long-term memory. So, and like I said, that's kind of, I know our goal as a teacher is we don't want them to just learn it for the 6 months or year that they're with us. We want them to really learn that content. So let's really quickly look at how to do Canvas discussions. So again, I am going to move kind of quickly through this just for the sake of time. So I apologize. If you have never used Canvas discussions, you may want to just watch because I'm not going to, I try and go slower so that you can kind of follow along, but there may not be enough time between each button that I click for you to flip back and forth to kind of do it alongside of me. So however you feel that you're going to follow along best, that's what I want you to do. Again, we're recording this, so you can always go back and look at it later. So what I'm going to do is I am going to click back over into my Canvas account here, and I'm going to go into my sample course, and I'm going to go to the modules page. Now, there are two places that you can create a discussion. You can create a discussion from the discussions page over here. The reason I don't like doing that is because then I have to add it to the module later. For me, that means I am more likely to forget to put it into a module, and students won't be able to see it. So I like to create my discussions straight from the modules page because that's where I'm directing students. So they always know to go to the modules page. The modules is where everything is organized. It's kind of laid out for them so that they know what to do in sequential order. And I am going to come here, and I am going to click the plus button. and I'm going to use the drop-down menu to choose what I want to add to the module. And in this case, I want to add a discussion. Now, I'm going to kind of refer back to this in a little bit. I can choose a discussion that I've already created in the past, but for this example, I'm going to click New Topic, and I'm going to call this George Washington's Precedent, if I can spell, and add item. And I feel like I didn't spell that right. I tend to not spell very well when I am live here with people, so I apologize. We're just going to go with it though. So I have my discussion here. Just like with a page, just like with an assignment, I've just created the shell to that item. So I need to click on it, and it's going to show me pretty much what students are going to see, which I think is kind of handy. Now I could go into student view here and see exactly what they're going to see, but it's pretty much this. They're just not going to get a couple of these buttons here. So that's kind of nice. You can preview and see what this looks like. And I'm going to need to click edit, again, just like a page, just like an assignment, in order to edit. And one thing that I do like about Canvas is the editing page looks the same no matter what you are creating, no matter what you're editing. So I only have to learn this toolbar one time for one item. And it's the same toolbar for pages, assignments, and discussions. So I can type my prompt in here. So what do you think would have not resigned after 2 terms? So maybe that's my prompt, is I just want to get students thinking about the fact that George Washington resigned after 2 terms, and that kind of set that precedent for later presidents. What maybe would have happened if he had not resigned, if he had not stepped down. So very basic text question there. I can come down, and just like assignments, I can choose who I want to participate in this discussion. So do I want my entire class? Or if I've created A-Day, B-Day sections, do I want just A-Day to participate in this discussion? And then I'm going to do a different one for B-Day students. Have I created groups in another way, sections in my class, divided them up? Or do I want it to be for everyone? I think it's really cool to have discussions for everyone, even if your students are A-Day, B-Day, because it's just going to help build that connection with each other. Down here under options, you've got a couple different options. I'm going to tell you my opinion, but you are the instructional leader in your classroom, so by no means is my opinion like Bible. You can decide what you need. But I would say make sure you turn on allow threaded replies. The reason being, what that's going to do is it's going to group conversations together. So when your students respond to this discussion initially, it's going to have each student's individual response. As they start then replying to each other, threaded replies is going to group those replies with the initial response. So if Billy responds and Susan responds to Billy, it's going to put those kind of in its own little section together so that you're actually seeing each conversation. If you don't do that, it's just going to be a long stream of everything. It just makes it difficult to see who is replying to each other. For most discussions, I like to have users, students post their response before they can see what everybody else sees. I like that because I think their response is more authentic. It's what they actually think and not what they see everybody else saying. So I think that's valuable. And as the teacher, that gives you good insight into what the students, kind of what they know. You can also choose to grade the discussion. So if you want to give them a grade, you can do that. You can also allow liking. I think that is a kind of a cool feature, but I would say consider your students, consider the environment that you have built, and just keep in mind that sometimes, like with social media, liking can be positive. It can be a boost. It can make you feel good, but sometimes it can also make students, if they don't get a lot of likes, then they kind of feel like, oh gosh, my answer wasn't as good as everybody else's. So I would say use your best judgment on that. There is value in that. You can also turn this into a group discussion. Now, what's cool about that, and what I'm going to say is if you've never used Canvas discussions before, or if you're not very comfortable with them, it means your students aren't comfortable with them either. So I would wait to do group discussions. However, once you do some whole class discussions in Canvas, group discussions will actually allow you to create little almost pods within Canvas of students where they are only discussing with each other. So you could do, I know if you're middle school ELA, I don't know if we have anybody middle school ELA in here, but with the Lucy curriculum, you have like shoulder partners where you have kind of an accountability person and you're like working back and forth. You can actually create virtual shoulder partners in here so that partners are responding. So like a think, pair, share type thing. You can group students together in groups of 3, in groups of 5, in groups of 8. So it's just a way to kind of narrow down and have more of a group like table discussion instead of whole class, which is kind of a cool feature. So I'm going to click save, and that's it. I have a discussion post. So like I said, very, very simple to create a discussion in Canvas. But let's look at how we can kind of step that up even more and bring in some more critical thinking, communication skills, and really get students to go deeper with their discussions instead of just saying like one-sentence responses. Before we do that, we looked at how to create a Canvas discussion. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to either unmute or type it in the chat if you have any questions about the button pushing, so how to create a Canvas discussion. All right, I will keep, I have a second screen over here, so I keep looking over here at the chat. I will keep my eye on that if you have a question. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that we are good to go, and we will keep moving on. So let's look, you saw my discussion that I just did. It was very, very basic. One sentence, standard text, that was it. But I would encourage you to add some more to your discussions. So here's kind of an example, a sample here. So we're going to look at some of those strategies and methods that you may see here, which is still very simple. It's going to take you a couple more minutes, yes, but I promise it will be worth it. You're going to get more out of your students by doing some of these things, and none of them are difficult. So let's look at some strategies. One thing that, if you're like me, you may struggle with creating a good prompt. So the better your prompt is, the better response you're going to get from students naturally. So I like to always start with Bloom's verbs. So I actually have this graphic printed. Again, you're going to get the slides so you can print it for yourself. And anytime I want to put a discussion question in Canvas or really in any activity that I do, I pull up this chart and I look. And as a teacher, you think, where do you want your students to fall in this activity? Do you want them to be more knowledge or understanding level? And that's okay. Or do you want to kind of stretch them and push them a little bit more and getting into analyzing, evaluating, or creating? So that's what I start with. I start with where kind of on this scale do I want them? And then what is the content that I want them to respond to? So in this case, it was George Washington's presidency and him resigning. So I'm going to group that content with kind of how, where kind of on this scale I want them to be. So maybe I just want them to describe what happened. Or maybe I want to defend why he should or should not have done it. Maybe I want them to take a position. So what we're going to do is, this is another interactive activity. So I have colored all of the slides where I'm asking you to interact blue to help you guys kind of identify when I'm asking for something from you to make it a little more interactive. It makes it more fun for me, but I think it also is a little more valuable for you all when you're participating. So what I want you to do is I just want you to think about your content, either the content that you are currently teaching, maybe the unit coming up, maybe your favorite unit to teach. If it's your favorite unit, you're probably most comfortable with it, so it may be easier for you to do this activity. And I want you to use one of the Bloom's verbs here and create your own prompt for discussion. And what I want you to do is, in just a second, on the Google Meet window, you are going to see, again, top right corner, this time beside the chat box, is like shapes, like I think it's a triangle, circle, and square maybe. If you click on that, I have turned on the Q&A feature. And what that does is it basically allows you to ask a question. But what I want you to do, instead of asking a question, is I want you to post your prompt that you create using any of these Bloom's verbs. So it could be knowledge or understand, it could be evaluate, it could be anywhere on the scale. I'm sorry, I just got the message that I lost connection. So hopefully it didn't cut out. It looks like people are responding. Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. So once people start posting their prompts, you'll see you have a thumbs up, and you can actually like others' prompts. And I just want you to like each other's prompts if you can see yourself using that prompt. Obviously, you might need to tweak it. So Sable is comparing a metal to a non-metal element. If I don't teach science, I might not be able to use that exact prompt, but I could certainly, that would be a good prompt for me to use to compare to other things in my course. Ooh, Sonia, I like that one. I feel like that's a good one. A lot of students get confused, the difference between an equation and inequality. Oh, cool, David. I like that one too. These are some good questions. And I don't know if you found it easier to use Bloom's verbs to kind of help you think of a prompt. I certainly do. That doesn't mean everybody does. But it's just one thing I have found that is, it makes it easier for me. The other thing that you could do is, and this is more to help guide students. So as a teacher, I can use Bloom's verbs. As a student, though, I may need a little guidance. Like I said, especially if I've not participated in a Canvas discussion as a student very much. I may need some guidance, some direction. So to give your students response stems. So to tell them, hey, here's your question. It's using a Bloom's verb. Your response should start with and give them a sentence starter. I think sometimes we think as middle high school teachers that sentence starters are elementary. But at the end of the day, students kind of, I always called it training my students. It sounds horrible, but they almost need to be trained in what is expected. And it is easier to tell them what's expected if you kind of give them a jump start. So you tell them your response to this discussion prompt should begin with these few words. When you reply to other students, choose one of these three reply sentence stems. So what I like to do, and I'll show you an example in just a minute, is if it's going to be a discussion, you need students replying to each other. You don't need them just posting their answer. So in the discussion prompt in Canvas, I'm going to ask the question, and then I'm going to tell them, you need to post your reply and then respond to at least two other students. when you respond to other students, choose one of the following sentence stems to use. And both of these graphics are linked to the full handout that has all of the sentence stems listed. What I try and do is I always try and include at least one agree and one disagree, because I think there is value in students disagreeing with each other as long as they're doing it appropriately. And by giving them a question stem or a response stem, they're going to learn how to do that in an appropriate way. They're not just going to say that answer is stupid, because you don't want that. But what you may want is to say something like, let's see, I agree that blank, but we also have to consider that, so then the students are acknowledging the fact that we connect on this one level, but have you considered this other thing? And then also creating norms. And I don't think this graphic is linked. I'll link this graphic though in the presentation so you can grab it and use it for yourself. But create some norms. So think about if your students were sitting in your classroom and you were doing a discussion, you would probably tell them, here's what I expect from you. Here are the norms of our discussion. Just because the students are discussing online doesn't mean that you can throw all of that out the window. They still need to know, like I said, what's expected and how to participate. So create those norms or create them together with the students and say, we're going to start using Canvas discussions. If we're discussing online, what do you think should be included in that? That could be a good in-class activity for you to have that in-class discussion. Or it could even be, this sounds kind of funny, it could be a Canvas discussion on discussions. But ask them what they think, what is going to make them feel respected and heard. So like I said, you can certainly grab this image and you can use it yourself and just kind of reference it. Anytime you have a discussion on Canvas, include this graphic and say, don't forget in your responses, make sure you're following our norms. So font matters. So if you're saying all caps, it can come across as yelling. Too many exclamation marks, maybe a little too intense. So get them to kind of start thinking through some of those things. Text formatting. Y'all, this is probably the easiest thing that you can do to kind of help guide them a little bit more in their discussion responses. So I am going to flip back over to my Canvas here, and I'm going to go to one of my other discussion prompts. So here's one. And let's look at some of the things that I've kind of done here. So what I've done is I have used just the text formatting. So I have used either italics or bold or color or size. Those are the four main things to kind of differentiate between the different types of text on this discussion. So you will notice that the directions, I've given students written directions and they are italicized red. And that's just kind of standard for any course that I create. If there are directions on a page, and I try and put directions on every page so that they know what they're supposed to do looking at this, it's red italic. Then I'm going to differentiate between, okay, here's your discussion prompt. Here's what your responses should start with or should include, and here's what your reply should look like. So I've kind of broken it down for them. It's just going to help draw their eye to the different items that they need to pay attention to, kind of break it up. You can see that the prompt is large text because that's kind of the main purpose of the discussion, is answering that initial question. But I've also bolded a couple things. So I have bolded the action verb that they're taking. So in this particular question, they are going to imagine. So I want them to know, hey, I need to start getting a little creative in my thinking. I need to imagine how ancient Egyptian culture and government would have been different if the people didn't practice polytheism. I've bolded polytheism because that's a vocabulary word from my standards, from my content area. So again, I'm just drawing their attention to different things in different ways. And then I'm giving them, hey, here's what your response should include, bullet points. So they can almost use it as a checklist. Here are the things that I need to do in my response. And then when I do 2 replies to classmates, I'm going to use one of these 3 sentence stems here. And again, I've given them an agree, I've given them a disagree, and I've given them a 3rd one. So they have some choice, but I'm also kind of guiding them. And all that is using that font toolbar. So if I go into edit mode here and I get my toolbar, again, the editing toolbar is the same in Pages, Assignments, and Discussions, then I would edit the font the same way I would edit something in an email or in a Google Doc. I highlight the word or words, and I use the toolbar to click and change the size, if it's bold, italic. I tend to not use underlining because underlining a lot of times means something is linked, and I don't want it to be deceiving for students. So I don't want them to think because a word is underlined that it's supposed to be linked to something. So I ignore underline. I use bold, italics, and font color here. I'm going to save this page. So here is kind of a before. So here's a sample prompt before any real text formatting. And I want you to notice that even as adults, there's just kind of a lot of words here, and there's nothing really separating it. There's nothing really drawing my attention to anything. It's just a bunch of black text. Kind of makes me not want to read it. So here's an after. Same exact words. I've just changed some things based on the font styling. So what I want you to do is in just a second on your screen, you're going to see a poll pop up. It's going to be in the same place as your question and answer. And I just want you to vote for the feature, the feature that you want to start including in your discussion prompts. So take a look at this after. So it's kind of after the question makeover. Okay. And you should see, whoops, now you should see, I had to click launch. You should see that poll. And again, I want you to vote for the one thing that if you only change one thing about your Canvas discussions, what is it going to be? What are you going to start using? And there's no right or wrong answer for this. If you want to kind of defend your answer and share why, that's kind of a bonus. Feel free to put something in the chat as to why you chose the answer you chose. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show everyone the results because we are tied between color and bullet points. I think those would probably be my top 2 as well. Just because color just, I'm a color person. I just think it spices it up a little bit. And bullet points, I'm also like a to-do list person. So I think that helps me kind of see, I need to do this, and then this, and then this. Yes, they're right. And that's kind of what I want you guys to see is those are small changes. They may add 5 seconds to your Canvas discussion, 5 seconds to highlight and click a button to change a color. But those 5 seconds are going to make a difference in your students being engaged in the discussion and knowing what to do. So another idea is to embed things. So here's what I mean by that. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll since we all responded. What I mean by embedding is you don't just have to do a text prompt. You can give students a stimulus. So you could give them, these are my 3 favorite things. You can give them an image. So I think for like social studies history, that is really cool. Give them, a map You could embed an article or like a primary document. You could embed a video, but you're giving them something to respond to. So read and respond, watch and reflect, this action and then this action. So you'll see on my sample here that I'm having them read this article that is going to talk about polytheism and then respond based on that reading that they did. And what that's going to do is it's going to give them the content and a way to respond to it all together in one place. It's also going to break up the learning. So instead of me watching and then reading and then doing this and then responding to all of these things that I've been asked to do, it's going to force me to respond bit by bit and little by little. And the more you can bring in students actively learning and being engaged and responding to what they're learning, the easier it's going to be for them to kind of chunk it in their minds and remember what it is. So you want to give them kind of little bits and pieces and then constantly have them do something with it. And I think the easiest way for them to do something with what you're giving them is a Canvas discussion, because with those Bloom's prompts, you can have so many different ways of asking them questions, and you can have everything range from a very easy, like knowledge understanding question up to something a little bit more difficult. So here are some things, I'm just checking my time, that you may want to consider. So consider doing an FAQ help desk. So this is what it's going to look like, and I have actually gone a step further. I have pushed this to the Commons. So the Canvas Commons has this that you can actually pull into your own course, so you don't have to create it from scratch, and then you can just edit based on what you want it to say. To find it in the Commons, you'll need to go to the Commons over here in your teal Canvas navigation. And then search for like FAQ. I think if you just search for FAQ, it should pop up. I will try to remember, I should have done this, so I apologize. I will try and link it to this page here so that you can go directly to the Commons and pull it into your course. But what this would be is it would be a discussion that you would maybe link on your homepage, or that you would maybe include at the beginning of every module. So remember when I was showing you how you can add to a module, and I mentioned that you can create a brand new discussion, or you can choose one that you've created in the past. You can choose this discussion every module, and you can put it into every module. It's the same discussion. You're basically just choosing to put a shortcut in every module. But what this is it would be a place where students can ask for help. So instead of them emailing you, and you'll have to kind of guide them to this and get them used to this is where they need to ask questions. But instead of them emailing you for help and waiting for you, one person, to respond, if they post their question to a help desk or an FAQ page, now they have an opportunity here, not only from you, but also from any of their classmates to get an answer. You want them to maybe describe their issue or their question well. Maybe you're going to teach them how to do a screenshot, because that may just give more information. And then again, you'll notice I use my text formatting here to kind of guide them, and said, hey, when you post your question to the class, put your question in bold text so that everybody can see, hey, here's the question. And then if you need to explain something, put that underneath. If you're replying, if you're helping another student out, make sure your answer is clear. If you have a video or a link to an article that you think is going to help, put a link in there. You could practice this with your students, and this would be a good place for them to ask technology questions, questions about assignments, anything that they need help on. So it's going to kind of build that connection between the students in your class, and it's also going to make it a little easier for students to get help more quickly, because again, they're not just asking you, one person, and just waiting for you, one person, to respond. They're now asking from the group. You could bookend modules with discussions. So bookend discussions. And what I mean by that is you could do the same discussion at the beginning and end of a module. So maybe you post a discussion prompt that is kind of a take on a KWL chart. So tell me what you know about this content that we're getting ready to learn in this module, and tell me what you want to know. Then at the end of the module, you add that same exact discussion prompt again, and you tell them, hey, look back at what we all said we knew already and wanted to know at the beginning of the module. Can you answer each other's what I wonder? Can you answer each other's questions? After we've learned everything in this module, what questions do we now know the answer to, and what questions do we still have lingering? You as the teacher can see, hey, here are the things that they really learned. They know these things because they're replying to it. Here are the questions that are still unanswered. And you can decide if that's a question that you need them to know the answer to, or maybe it's just it was just kind of one of those like, oh, I just wonder, this. But you can kind of get almost a type of formative assessment this way, to see what it is they learned, and they're actually going to start kind of teaching each other. Start a discussion online and carry it into class. So this is obviously only going to work for those of you teaching in an A-Day, B-Day cohort situation, but maybe on your B-Day students, maybe on Tuesday you post a discussion and you say, here's the prompt, post your initial reactions and read everybody's responses. On Thursday, come in and be prepared to talk about it. And then they come into class. They've already done almost like this pre-work. They know the prompt, they know the initial responses, and they know what each other has said. And that's just going to help have a better in-class discussion. So now we are sitting in the same room. We've all seen each other's initial responses, and we can kind of jumpstart that conversation. You can also add rubrics to your discussions. If you want to know how to use rubrics, shameless plug, that is one of our topics this spring, grading and feedback, where we'll look at how to create rubrics. So if you want to grade Canvas discussions, give them a grade for that, then using a rubric is a really easy way for you as a teacher to give the grade, but it's also going to help students, again, know what's expected, because they're going to have this rubric attached to it so that they know, here's what my teacher is looking for and how many points it is. Respond to students, but not every student. So here's why. If you respond to some students' discussion when they're responding to your prompt, if you reply to them, you're modeling what a good reply looks like. So you would use those sentence stems, you'd use those norms. So you're going to model for students. You're also going to be giving students feedback. And if you change who you're responding to each time, then students aren't answering the question for you because you're not responding to everybody. So you don't want to respond to every student, because then they're just writing their response to you because they know you're the one who's replying. But if you're modeling and you're encouraging students to respond to each other, but you're kind of in there involved too, then you're creating connections with the students. You're getting some more engagement, but you're also kind of keeping them on their toes because they don't know who you're going to respond to. And it's forcing them to respond to each other. So now they're writing the responses a little bit more authentically because they're not just writing what they think you want to see. So here's another idea and place where I want you guys to be a little interactive. So your discussions don't have to be just text. So you can ask students to find an image that reflects something about your content. Create an icon that represents something about your content. Use only emojis to explain whatever it is. Give them an image or a political cartoon and say, develop a caption for this. So you can really go more than just text-based. So to kind of practice this and see what this may look like, I want you in the chat to answer the question on your screen using only emojis. So I'll kind of model how to do that. So I'm going to go to a new tab and I'm going to go to emojicopy.com. And what I'm going to do is it's going to allow me to search up here for different words. So think about, and I'll go back so you can see the question, but you'll think about the question and what your answer is. And then you will, let's see, and you just click the emojis and it's going to kind of line them up in this box that you can then copy and paste into the chat on Google Meet. So I want you to kind of create, obviously it's not going to be like a complete sentence because we don't have like all of our articles and all of those sort of things, but use emojis to share how you want to use discussions in Canvas moving forward. So you may have to get a little creative with this, but that's kind of the goal. Same if you ask students to respond to using emojis, they're going to have to think a little bit harder and they're going to have to get a little creative. But of course they love emojis, so that's always a plus. So how are you going to use discussions in Canvas moving forward? Using emojis.
How are you able to get that to happen? I'm clicking on the emoji and I'm not having it respond in the toolbar.
It's not popping up. Like when I click on one, it kind of pops up here and lines them all up for me. And then I can just click copy.
Mine isn't able to do that.
Are you on what kind of device are you on?
Apple.
Okay. Emojipedia is another option.
Okay.
I think it's Emojipedia. Yep, Emojipedia. So while y'all are typing your emojis, the other cool thing about this is if you have students respond in emojis and then you ask students to reply to each other, what you could do is you could, so students post their initial response in emojis, and then you tell students that their replies to each other need to be what they think that student meant. So students are getting feedback from each other. How clearly did they choose their emojis? Did they choose emojis that conveyed what it was they were trying to say? And I'd love to get a couple more responses in the chat before we move on, just so we can all kind of see some different ideas, what it may look like, how we're all being creative. Karen, I'm guessing, I'm hoping the vomit emoji has to do with your content area. Ms. Bullock teaches nursing? I don't think I got that right. Yes, okay, I did get that right. All right. So you can see it's not necessarily easy to use emojis to convey what you mean, especially when you're limited by the emojis there. But like I said, students love emojis. So it can be kind of a good balance between forcing them to think a little bit more critically, but also kind of fun because they're using emojis. All right, so in our last few minutes, I'm going to explain what your artifact needs to be, and then we will have time for any questions that you may have before you go for the rest of the afternoon. So for your artifact, what I would like for you to do, I think that is, I'm sorry, Mr. Clinton was knocking on the window to wave. What I would like for you to do is I would like for you to create a Google slide file, so presentation. It truly only has to be 1 or 2 slides, as many as you need, but you could do it all in one. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a screenshot of a Canvas discussion that you have used, or if you've not used a Canvas discussion, then take a screenshot of like a module that shows you don't have one in there. So that's your before. And then I want you to try at least 2 of the things that you learned today. So I gave you ideas about font, about embedding content for your students to respond to, using blooms as your verbs. I gave you ideas for specific discussions you could use. So choose 2 of the things that you learned and implement that, and then take another picture. So kind of a before and after. So kind of one of those like makeover shows where they show you like the kitchen before, and then they flash and they show you the kitchen after. That always looks amazing. And then either at the bottom of that slide or on the next slide, wherever you need space, include a reflection. And I want your reflection to just include what you plan to continue doing with discussions. So what went well? What did your students seem to react positively to? What do you want to keep doing as you keep moving discussions? And what do you maybe want to change or stop doing? So maybe you try discussions, you try a couple of these strategies, something didn't work or you didn't like how something went. So what are you going to change as you keep going? So do you plan to continue doing what went well? What do you plan to change? What maybe didn't go as well that you kind of learned from? Again, it's just a Google slide or slides, depending on what's easiest for you. And you will submit. I am going to paste this link in the chat for you guys. And you will submit using the file upload option because you are uploading a Google file. So you'll notice on that form, when you go to fill it out, when you're ready, there's 3 different options for submitting. There's a text-based option, there's a link option, and there's a file upload option. You will see it says do not use in 2 of them. You're just going to ignore those and use the file upload one. And in the chat, I am now going to, that second link is the presentation. So you can grab this presentation. Make sure before you leave, please, that you either save the link to the form for your artifact submission, or you save the presentation link because the artifact form is linked on that last artifact slide. So make sure you have one or both of those saved so you can access them later. You can bookmark them, you can email them to yourself, you can copy and paste into a Google Doc where you took notes, whatever works for you. And I am happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you're walking away with some ideas and maybe the a little bit more ready to try Canvas discussions with your students. And y'all have a good afternoon.